I think I've always been pro markets and pro kind of businesses and entrepreneurship, and that was what I was doing with my life as well. But I think seeing kind of like the hyper capitalism in crypto, I think something that I felt disillusioned about was that ultimately there's a category of things that markets are incapable of producing or incentivizing, mainly the things that are not monetized, that don't have an ability for the market to invest, produce, incentivize, aka public goods, was left in there's a way in which like it kind of felt that crypto was in ways pretty dystopian, where everyone is chasing after kind of the new potential private good that can be monetized, aka things that have tokens or new L1s, etc. But no one is really like reinvesting much back into the things that we need, really. Markets can solve a lot of things, but markets can't solve everything. And how, in a world where we don't have governments or tax money to kind of do investment in those things in the way that we do in the kind of the offline world, like how do we approach that? Well, the thing that was really top of mind for me, Nouns was the thing that caught my eye at the time because it felt like a completely different approach, an approach that felt a little bit silly from the outside. It's like, maybe we can just build memes that fund public goods. Now just felt like an entirely different idea where like, what if just public good itself just had its own economic energy? And that economic energy theoretically is unbounded in the same way that Dogecoin's market cap is like unbounded. And so that just captivated my mind and really haven't been able to stop thinking about now since.
Yo, grab your headphones, get ready to roll. ZeroPod coming at you, taking control. We talking about nouns, NFTs, and Web3. Doing it big, bringing the knowledge for free. Ethereum is the game, we breaking all the chains. Open source, public goods, it's a whole new terrain. Educate, elevate, empower the crew. ZeroPod revolution, we coming for you.
Welcome back to another episode of ZeroPod, a CC0 video podcast about enjoying Ethereum, enjoying nouns, and enjoying life on chain. I'm your host, Toady Hawk from the Noun Square Onchain Media Collective, and I'm excited to welcome our guest this week, Hong Kim, aka Noun40, who is an OG Nouner, as well as the co-founder and CTO of Bitwise Investments, who recently made news as one of the first cohort of Bitcoin ETF providers in the US of A. 40 has become a friend of mine during my time in Nouns, and I have a lot of respect for the time and care that he always puts into governance and other efforts in the Nouns community, especially with his busy schedule. So 40, super glad to have you with me today here on the pod. Welcome to Zero Rights Reserved.
Excited to be here, big fan. And we've been trying to make this happen for a while now, so yeah. Excited.
We have. It's been a long time coming, and I know a lot of Nouns community are excited about it, and I know that because, typically before these pods, we throw up a cast on Farcaster and maybe on Twitter and X sometimes and ask people, what do you want us to ask? And usually we'll get one or two responses. And on this one, we got like 30 or 40 great questions. So this pod's actually going to be a little bit different than most because I'll probably defer to a lot of the questions from the community that people really wanted to hear your takes on. But before that, though, nouns are people, places, and things. So before we get into a discussion of all the places and things, I'd love to start with the person that is Hong Kim, and I'd love to hear a little bit about your background, maybe how you ended up a very on-chain person, how you ended up founding a Bitcoin investment company, and how you eventually found your way to Nouns. Basically, just give us the Noun40 origin story, if you would.
Yeah, I don't know how far back I should go, but I'm originally from Korea, came here for college, and was always interested in tech and startups, and naturally kind of gravitated towards San Francisco, Silicon Valley, and came here after graduating, and was looking kind of with my close friend and co-founder, Hunter Horsley, who is the CEO of Bitwise. We were looking at a lot of different ideas, and it was 2016. So naturally, a lot of people that were in our peer group were very much interested in Bitcoin and crypto in general, and tried to resist it for the longest time because you just don't want to feel like you're joining a hype train. But I think at some point, naturally, we just ended up thinking that there really is a there here, as in something, regardless of where we are in the hype cycle of that market cycle, felt that there was something really multi-decade that was going to be happening here. And so if you have that conviction, then it really doesn't matter what time and almost even like what way you join. You just need to find your way to get involved. And
so basically just be early. Is that what you're saying?
No, but I think in the grand scheme of things, everyone is early, even to this day. I think that the funny thing is that like every bull market, the new participants always think that like they're late. I thought we were late in 2016 because like already Coinbase, Kraken, Gemini, all those companies existed, and we're like, what is there left to build? And we were thinking about that, and what felt clear was that at the time it was contested as to whether traditional finance would ever engage with crypto. So it wasn't really considered an asset class. It was considered more of an asset. Bitcoin was the only thing that was considered seriously. And then there's all these like side experiments, but really it wasn't like a respected asset class of its own. And so there really weren't asset managers. That's a different category of companies. BlackRock is different from, let's say, the New York Stock Exchange or even a brokerage like Schwab. And so crypto didn't really have its BlackRocks that would create investment products that could trade on stock exchanges, or kind of people can buy in the brokerage accounts, et cetera. So that's kind of how we got into the idea of maybe we should build an asset manager, or maybe we should build investment products. If this were to kind of grow into the thing that we all think it would, then eventually those products would need to exist for crypto to engage with traditional finance and Wall Street, et cetera. And so that's kind of how we got started with Bitwise and how I got started in my crypto journey overall. I think maybe the more relevant question to this conversation is like how my on-chain journey began, and it really very much aligned with my nouns journey. So at that point, maybe it was like, what year was nouns? 2021, is that right?
Yeah, 2021 August.
Yeah. So at that point, I'm like 4 or 5 years into building Bitwise, and have been in crypto as an industry for a while now. But I was getting a little bit disillusioned by the idea that like, I think I've always been pro markets and pro kind of businesses and entrepreneurship, and that was what I was doing with my life as well. But I think seeing kind of like the hyper capitalism in crypto, I think something that I felt disillusioned about was that ultimately there's a category of things that markets are incapable of producing or incentivizing, mainly the things that are not monetized, that don't have an ability for the market to invest, produce, incentivize, aka public goods, just was left. And there's a way in which like crypto felt, and it was at the bear market as well. So like I like lived through 2019 and 2020 is when I kind of solidified this feeling. But like it kind of felt that crypto was in ways pretty dystopian, where everyone is chasing after kind of the new potential private good that can be monetized, aka things that have tokens or new L1s, et cetera. But no one is really like reinvesting much back into the things that we need, really. So for example, at the time, everyone wanted proof of stake to happen, but how many people were actually donating to the clients teams that are putting in that work? They're like begging on the streets. And all the crypto VCs are like putting hundreds of millions of dollars into new alt L1s. And so like, okay, are we just always going to try to start new networks, new L1s, because that's like where the new bags are, and we will just forever be like cycling through this? And like, no, like, how do we get to a solid foundation? How do we progress? How do we kind of like reinvest into the things that we need for our like world to continue to be built? And that those types of questions were starting to be really like the questions in the forefront for me. So markets can solve a lot of things, but markets can't solve everything. And how, in a world where we don't have governments or tax money to kind of do investment in those things in the way that we do in the kind of the offline world, like how do we approach that, was the thing that was really top of mind for me. And then I got very interested in so the mature networks like Bitcoin or Ethereum are all kind of grappling with this, and I think in 2019 or 2020 was when Ethereum really started grappling with it. So that's when like things like Gitcoin and even like Optimism's kind of retro PGF kind of direction solidified further, and I was very interested in those things. I think that's when like the funding the commons kind of conference began with a lot of like impact related thoughts as well. And so I was like following everything, but nouns was the thing that caught my eye at the time because it felt like a completely different approach, an approach that felt a little bit silly from the outside. It's like, why don't maybe we can just build memes that fund public goods? Like maybe we can just not leverage revenue income from other things like optimism, or so you can think of it as like almost like a tax of an economy and trying to use that to fund it. Gitcoin is like the traditional style of donation. It's trying to do it better with like quadratic funding and stuff, but it's still like a form of charity, philanthropy. That is also a well-trodden path. So both paths are like very well-trodden, and they definitely should be explored. But like now just felt like an entirely different idea where like, what if just public good itself just had its own economic energy? And that economic energy theoretically is unbounded in the same way that Dogecoin's market cap is like unbounded. And so that was like, that just captivated my mind and really haven't been able to stop thinking about nouns since.
Do you remember where you first saw nouns? Did you just see it on, like in a Punk's Discord or on Twitter or?
Yeah, I saw it on Twitter. I think the thing that I didn't know about it until like maybe day 70 or 80. It was when there was a Medium post back when we used to have Medium posts by netanders about like nouns funding real world public goods or something with like the skate parks images and stuff. Yeah. And so I think that's what kind of like wait, maybe it's not crazy that like a meme could fund skate parks. And if that's the case, then maybe memes can fund like Ethereum clients, and memes can fund protocols like Uniswap, and memes can fund a lot of the public infrastructure that we would need for our on-chain world to work.
Well, that kind of leads into one of our community questions that we can maybe start with from the legend Brennan, the duck noun. He wanted to know what made you settle on the void head noun, which has now, of course, become pretty iconic. It's noun 40, so anyone who's not familiar with nouns, you might not know that any noun that ends in a zero means that it was previously a nounder noun. It went to the nounder. So how did that happen? I think you and I, by the way, are the only ones with our hands on nounder nouns outside of the nounders, perhaps, or maybe a few on secondary, but how did that happen? Why did you choose void, and how did you get your hands on
it? So again, I started paying attention kind of around like noun 70 or 80 or so, and I was looking at the auction every day. And I was also looking at secondary and to see if anything popped up that I was just looking for something that spoke to me. And the void had popped up, eBoy. Put it up on OpenSea, and it was a little nerve-wracking actually, because OpenSea actually didn't have any secondary trades. It was like I ended up doing the first secondary trade, and it was also like my first time transacting on OpenSea. So I wasn't sure if I was just misreading the UI or like that there actually wasn't anything that traded. But the project has been around for like close to 100 days. It's like, what's going on? I had a hard time understanding at the beginning, but then I just got the conviction and did pull the trigger. Really, I liked Void because it was like one of the few kind of abstract heads. And there's something about that open-minded, the kind of like open-endedness that I like about that. And so, yeah, it had just had a clean look, and it just really spoke to me. So instead of waiting for a noun that spoke to me on the auction, I just decided to go ahead on the secondary. So yeah, that's how it happened.
The rest is history. Two people actually asked, Brennan and Krell both asked, if you had to replace your noun head, which one would you choose? Or Krell asked what your favorite noun head was. aside from void. Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, I think like a bit of a confession on my end is that I think a lot of I probably spent much less time with the artwork than a lot of other people like Krell or Brennan. In a way, I've like just built love towards the nouns art through people rocking them as PFPs. So like I love the goat head because I've seen Goldie with it for a long time, and I love the fax machine because like Krell rocks it, and I love like the milk cart because of Seneca. And so like those are the things that I've ended up seeing a lot and have built kind of an emotional connection to, even though they're not something that I initially chose or a noun that I own, is kind of that. I don't have specifically one that I was like I would rotate to if it wasn't for void.
You'd be back to square one. You'd be looking at the auction and opening it again to see what spoke to you. No, I think that's cool that people can sort of rock them and sort of make it part of their identity. And that's one of the things that I like about nouns too. And you kind of alluded to this earlier about how it's kind of like bizarro, like instead of it being like an ape or an animal or whatever, it's like you're a can of spam, and that's kind of, there's something endearing about that.
Yeah, 41 said something kind of early on that I thought was interesting in that vein, which is that like the kind of silliness and absurdness of the heads and the PFPs kind of allow people to be a little less serious than how they would in other governance contexts, and maybe be more authentic in that way. And I think there's some truth to that.
Yeah, maybe it kind of plays into like the pseudonymity as well. Like you don't have to be completely anon. You can kind of build a character around your fax machine or whatever the case may be.
Definitely. I think the NFTs really helped Nouns governance a lot. I think if we were all just a bunch of Ethereum addresses or even just ENS names, I don't think the identity pieces would have developed as strongly.
Well, you can compare it against all the other DAOs pretty much, right? And I don't think you get the same camaraderie and community from like ENS DAO, or no offense to ENS DAO, but just like you said.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's many other factors that led to the governance kind of being stickier or like more engaging or kind of more functional. I think one really underrated thing is that the kind of continuous linear issuance has led to the governance process or the participants kind of grow in a gradual way rather than like an airdropped kind of like suddenly you have 10,000 people that you're trying to govern with together type of situation. Also that there wasn't like there's the nounders that take 10%, but that's still always a minority. And so like most other DeFi DAOs, for example, you start with like the team and then the like large VC investors, and ultimately they have majority of the voting power often, at least at the beginning. And so then it's pretty discouraging to really try to be like a small voter. But with Nouns, there's always been a lot of contentious votes, and like contentious votes really come down to a few votes at the end. So I think that also played a large role. I think there's a number of things that led to contributed to it. But yeah, I agree.
I always think that that's one of the most impressive things about Nouns is that the Nounders did sort of abdicate most of that control early on, and that the culture still built in the way that it did. Like it's kind of a little bit of a mini miracle in a way that they were able to draw together so many like-minded people with a meme and pull in the same direction without having to exercise that top-down control.
Yeah. I think there's really a lot of care in the long-term kind of thinking that the Nounders engaged in the early on that really ended up mattering and contributing to that dynamic. And like for example, they took compensation in Nouns format in the native meme currency and nothing else. Not royalties, not like a cut of the auction revenue or something like that. And in that way, it was very incentive aligned and also that they did this kind of continuous auction thing, which really feels pretty brutal in the kind of inflation in the beginning.
Well, like
And
noun 2 is like 100% inflation, right?
yeah. But over time, that is kind of how you end up in much more healthier governance, because even if you have a lot of money, paying attention to nouns for just the daily actions day after day to acquire enough of a position to have a controlling stake is just very hard, because most crypto whales just does not have that amount of attention to begin with, and there's not that much nouns on secondary.
Yeah, even when the fork was happening, it took them like 8 months to accumulate the tokens they needed, right?
Yeah, that's a really big part of the nouns governance defense. Is that and over time that will no longer be true when there's like a lot. When we get into we might talk about the fungible token and such, and when liquidity grows and when the supply grows, at some point these dynamics will change. But in the early days when the everything was very raw, I think that inability for anyone to just like, I'll just drop in a few million ETH and just like buy everything is just not possible in nouns. And so it has been, I think a strong defense point.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but one thing that gets asked a lot is what is nounish, or what is your definition of nouns? So I wanted to ask you that. Take your time to think about it, but how would you describe nouns in the most succinct way possible?
Oh, tough question. To me, nouns has like an aspirational optimism to it. I think that's ultimately what I disagreed most with a lot of the book value focused nouners that ultimately forked away, which is that I don't disagree that many of what they advocated for might just be from a just like pure expected value perspective, may be the right thing to do if you're just trying to preserve your ETH or preserve the treasury. But ultimately, we're trying to run an incredibly aspirational experiment, which is that maybe, just maybe, a meme could capture an incredible amount of economic energy. And just maybe the participants that are involved in the governance of that meme machine might have a outward orientation that cares about the externalities that it creates more than just their personal self-interest in monetizing, and that unbounded meme energy can create kind of unbounded positive externalities, and that we can overcome all this this criticism that crypto is all for nothing, that it doesn't export any positive externalities to the world. Like that's the aspirational dream of nouns, and it's not an easy thing, or it's not even a likely thing to succeed. Even at this point, I don't think it's a likely thing to succeed. The auction prices have been just going down only. So like if you're like we should do something different because auction prices have been going down only, and like this is a failure, etc. I'm not necessarily saying that is kind of probabilistically wrong assessment, but ultimately, if you go down the more safer path, then I don't see much value in the experiment, and I don't see that kind of like, if it is not a aspirationally optimistic and like creative thing, then it is no longer really nouns to me. It's really not nounish to me. And you can kind of find like variations of, or like kind of mini thoughts there as well. Like if it is mostly a self-interested effort, like a lot of that's a totally fine thing. Like you want to put in your time and you want to see the highest ROI of that time, then that's a totally fair thing to do as a market participant. But I don't see that as necessarily what nouns is trying to do. Nouns is mostly trying to solve market failures. Like there are pieces in our society, and especially in our on-chain world, where there is no like government that is just funding things. That there are like places and efforts that just go unnoticed or like underfunded, and like Nouns is trying to find a way to fill in those cracks and support this world. And that, so like there's a lot of many other places that you could do, mostly very clear cut, like self-interested kind of ROI calculation based activities. But that doesn't feel what Nouns is for me. And those activities don't necessarily feel nounish to me, even though I don't have any problem with them.
That's what I've always said too. It's like, hedge funds already exist and many other types of businesses exist, and there's no problem with those things. And I think capitalism has brought a lot of good to the world, but it's just not what it's not what attracted me to Nouns as sort of like
I would say like a really high degree of craft feels very nounish to me. I think that's what Nounders have done with the art, and also just like the code base as well. I mean, it's I think was crafted above and beyond any other NFT collection, and I think that's the bar. And that's not to say that every fan art needs to meet that bar, but that is the bar. And there's a way in which the kind of high craft, kind of putting attention to detail, is very nounish. And I also think there's a way in which kind of being a bit weird or being open to things being a bit weird is very nounish as well. Kind of not needing to conform to the rest of the world, but finding our own aesthetic, our own culture, or kind of I think building our own tools are also very nounish in that way. Like we not needing to reinvent the wheel all the time, but to have the agency to do that feels very nounish to me. Those things feel nounish to me.
Maybe we need to reinvigorate keep nouns weird, and like maybe we should start doing some rounds.wtf for like weirdness on Farcaster. That could be kind of fun. Like post something weird and get funded for it. I don't know.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I think we're doing okay on the weirdness factor, or like the kind of like having an infinitely like deep rabbit hole for the deep fans side of things. I think Nouns has never really failed much on that dimension. The reason I've been pushing the fungible token direction a lot is because I think the dimension in which we could be doing actually much better is also offering a dead simple on-ramp. Like there's a simple way to engage, and then you can gradually, like discover the depth of it and discover the deep weirdness of it, as opposed to putting the depth and weirdness kind of upfront and forcing people to kind of face that learning curve to be a kind of sticky user. The symbol itself, the noggles, is very simple, and I think a lot of brand value has accrued to that as well. But yes, I think that's kind of one of my main motivations is that like we're doing okay on the weirdness and the kind of depth of the game, and we should try to offer a bridge to the more average fan.
Increase the distribution of the meme.
Yeah. And I think that would also make the depth of the game a lot more fun as well. Like ultimately, if you have 100x amount of people that are paying attention, and then all the things that you can do are also much more interesting at that point. Like the person that is the deep fan that is putting in a year to build the most unique T-shirt for Nouns, has an audience to sell to, and maybe that person can now then.
By the way.
Yeah. It was DeFi Jesus, or that person can now maybe do that as their like main income source, and not just be I think the casual economic actor or the fan can add a lot to the game that is being played by the deep fan as well. There is like this really wonderful interaction that I think right now we're a little bit too top heavy. Like we need a much wider base of casual fans and I think we have that. Nouns actually really has a broad brand recognition, and I think we just don't have a way for them to engage economically with the meme.
I think that's very true. I've always said that about Nouns. Like it feels like Nouns is so unique where such a small group of actual owners and then such a huge, number of concentric circles of like builders and fans stretching out so much further than you'd see in most NFT projects. So I like that framing a lot. And I'm glad you brought up $Nouns, or the fungible token that's been on our minds a lot lately. For people who are listening in, could you sort of give us a broad overview? What are people talking about? What is $Nouns? What does that represent for Nouns?
Yeah, the Nouns fungible token represents a simple and safe way that people can get fractional economic ownership of nouns. So there has been various attempts at the past. Nounlets is one. You could maybe argue Lil Nouns or Shark DAO is another. There was even an FTX vault as well. And each of those have had issues. Maybe they trade at a premium that is meaningfully dislocated from the Nouns price. Maybe they initially traded at a premium, but then over time traded at a much discount. And there really is no way to close that gap because you can't really easily redeem to nouns or kind of convert back to that economic value. Maybe there isn't enough liquidity, so that if you want to have a meaningful position, there's no way to get that. Or maybe fees are high. Like ultimately, I think this need has existed because basically this point just became so clear to me when I was working on the Bitcoin ETF, which is that like, how does Bitcoin work as an economic system? If Bitcoin was only sold in whole Bitcoins, would Bitcoin be what it is today? No fucking chance. Like Bitcoin Twitter or crypto Twitter at large, but like it has so many people that care about it as a system because people can buy fractions of a Bitcoin. Anyone can put in 1%, 5% of their net worth into Bitcoin, regardless of whether you're a billionaire or you have $1,000 in your bank account and you're earning up to try to build wealth. Like you can tell anyone to buy Bitcoin, and they can do it, and there's no disadvantage of the person that is buying $100 worth of Bitcoin versus the person that is buying $1 million worth of Bitcoin. They're all buying the same Bitcoin, and they all get the same kind of economic outcome. So when the billionaire is getting a 10% appreciation, the person that put in $100 is making a 10% appreciation, and it is as meaningful of a 10% to both of them because they both put in something that is meaningful to them. So they're excited by the same degree, and they have a shared experience of excitement at the same time that creates kind of these social ties and these like social networks that get amplified. Is ultimately how crypto is very much different from anything that came before it. Like you can be excited about Disney, but about a Disney movie, but like a Disney movie fan is very different from a Disney movie Disney shareholder. That kind of like shared economic ownership by a large fan base is ultimately the superpower of crypto. And what I realized by kind of being back in Bitcoiner culture a lot for a while and coming back, and it's the same for ETH culture or Solana culture. It all works the same way. Is that anyone can buy in any fractions that make sense to them, and then they can be excited about the success of the network. And when I look back at Nouns, unfortunately, Nouns doesn't have that. Now, Nouns has maybe 100 people or 200 people that own Nouns, and then everyone else is fans of Nouns without really that economic tie to it. And no way of getting it, because like a value of a noun is similar to like a value of a full Bitcoin historically. So you have this like bifurcation of the fans that don't have economic ownership, and then a very small number of nouners that do, and they almost want to be more tied to each other. Nouners want fans to have economic tie to the meme, and the fans want to have economic tie to the meme, but there just has been no way for that to be established in a clean way without premiums or discounts, or without weird ways in which you need to track the governance or build it yourself with a group of people.
What happened with Ugly DAO is a great example, right? We had all these fans who really wanted to have a stake in governance, but then it only took like 30 or 40% of those members to be like, I want out. And then everybody had to sell. There's just no good way to own a fraction of a noun.
Yeah, exactly. Like a group of friends can come together, and then you start having this issue. Like you all have to make the decision together about whether you're going to collectively sell your one noun that you bought together or not. And that was a situation with Nounlets as well. And like Lil Nouns had a lot of nouns inside the governance, but then it has another governance layer that has its own attack vectors and blah 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 blah, and you're kind of co-signing on the risks of that, which is very hard to quantify. And so, what is fungible token nouns or $ nouns? It's a canonical way to convert NFT nouns to the fungible nouns. So one noun becomes 1 million units of the fungible token nouns. And so there's a smart contract function. So the verbs team will build the create and redeem functions into the nouns protocol. And so that you can deposit a noun and get 1 million fungible nouns tokens, and be able to do the inverse as well, where you can redeem by bringing 1 million nouns tokens. And that's it. I think an important thing for people to recognize is that we're not creating another token supply. We're not saying that, we'll just launch a token kind of out of thin air that is distinct from the NFTs.
There's not a meme coin in the purest definition of a meme coin.
Yeah. And I think the importance there to me is that it's important to, there's many reasons I would very much advocate for that. Is one, I think multiple token supplies are always very, very hard to manage. Like even for a centralized team that launches multiple NFT collections, it usually ends up being a disaster. And for a DAO to manage that, where like the voters are one economic incentive, but then they manage the supply of another thing that is another economic incentive group. I don't want to be part of a DAO that is responsible of managing that. Another element is that we want to ultimately drive the economic value back to the auction, back to the treasury, to be able to do more things. That is always the goal for Nouns for me, is that it is not kind of a finite game where we're trying to create one specific moment where we kind of capture upside and can exit or something, but rather that we're trying to make something very sustainable long term, where we build more economic throughput and be able to do more externally.
So the bull case is people maybe buy $ nouns or the nouns fungible token because they want to be involved in the nouns ecosystem, and then they accumulate that. Maybe they do it by winning rounds or, in other ways. And eventually they want to actually join nouns with an NFT because they want to make it their profile. What's the reasoning why someone would eventually hopefully get a noun with their $ nouns, I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
is if you end up becoming a deep fan and owning a full noun and being involved in governance is an aspiration that you have. I think it will always be something that only a small minority of the nouns fans aspire to. It's a rare thing. Like it's contributed. Governance is also a public good in itself, and so really you're doing a public service if you pay a lot of attention to the props and to your vote with reasons and reach out to the prop builders to understand the proposals better and try to help them build better props. All these things are just public service, and it's not for everyone, and it's not for everyone for all moments of their time. There might have years that they have time for that, and there might have years that it's not. So trying to design a game or a system where everyone is expected to graduate to that state is a lost cause from my perspective. But something that I am certain of is that there is some portion of people in this universe for which that is something that they can sustainably do at some time of their life in a way that they enjoy.
And the amount of people who've wanted to be delegates too is a good harbinger for that too.
Exactly. Like I don't know if that's 1% or 2% or whatever, but that they exist. So I think the way in which the nouns fungible token really contributes to the deep game and the governance house as well is that for every 100 kind of nouns fans that we create, there's going to be that 1 or 2 fans that become the fans that has the aspiration to, like, I want to be a part of this governance thing and do this public service and build kind of friendships with these people that are actually kind of do it together. And so then I think there definitely are going to be a lot of casual buyers, people that just want economic exposure, et cetera. But there is going to be some portion of those people that end up having that aspiration, and then we'll welcome them with open arms. And I feel very excited about that as well.
One way you could sort of think about it, you were sort of comparing it against Bitcoin and about how, Bitcoin has a culture around not needing to own a full Bitcoin. But at the same time, Bitcoin also has a culture of, like, I'm a full coiner, or a whole coiner is a meme within the Bitcoin community. And so maybe that's a comparison you could make too. It's like owning a noun in that case is like your whole coiner moment. And you
Exactly.
can imagine, you can imagine people who are whole coiners, Bitcoin whole coiners, maybe they would want a badge on Twitter that says, I've got a whole coin or 2 whole coins or whatever.
Totally. I think a lot of actual nouns fans, once they get to 1 million units of the nouns fungible token, will convert it over to the NFT format. So choose amongst the pool, the nouns that are deposited in the fungibles contract, choose a noun that really speaks to them and then redeem it. It's the same economic exposure. They can always at any time turn it back to the 1 million units of the nouns fungible token permissionlessly and without any financial friction. So they're not taking an economic risk of doing that act, but that act comes with additional social status. They can rock it as their PFP. They can have it on the on-chain kind of history that they at that point held that noun. So I think a lot of people, when they go above that threshold, will have the aspiration to do so. The people that are like large kind of just financial actors, if you're a large fund that is owning it, or you're always kind of holding it in a portfolio or something, then there's really not much reason, and those people will just hold it for as nouns fungible tokens forever.
All of them, like, what about people like Variant who have, like, held the NFTs before? Do you think they'll convert to ERC just for more fungibility, or for some it might still be?
I think even there, with the kind of institutional investor category, it can very much vary as well. If they're long-term holders, like, maybe they don't care about having access to immediate liquidity, or like they can always change it to again. It's like almost the same. In this world, they're almost like the same. It's just like one on-chain transaction away from converting it from one to the other. So it almost doesn't matter what format you keep it in. I mean, even the venture funds or these types of actors also are like nouns fans, and given that they have the fandom, they might like to kind of hold full kind of the NFT versions of nouns and maybe vote and build kind of provenance into their specific nouns that they like and that they've been voting with, and and have some emotional attachment to it. Like the pure financial and economic interest and the kind of like fandom interest aren't always as clear cut. And as kind of binary as people might think. So I think a blend of those behaviors will exist, and yeah.
This framing has been really helpful for me as well, so I hope it is for listeners too.
Also, V1 might not have the fungible tokens having voting power, but I think the consensus is that the fungible tokens should as well, because we shouldn't be forcing people to make kind of the like just pointless on-chain transactions to kind of redeem and vote and then put it back to just be able to vote to props. Like effectively, we should be thinking about them as the same thing that can always be converted back to each other, and to not really create discrimination for one or the other. So yeah, the nouns fungible token would just be able to vote as well in the future. And so it's not really about like, oh, NFTs have voting power and fungible tokens don't. I think just the right way to think about it for me is that both do, and both are basically the same thing, just in like kind of a shape-shifting format. And the main reasons to shift it to the NFT format and keep it in that way is if you care about having and building provenance to a specific NFT and specific artwork that you care about. And that can be a fair amount of people. Anyone that wants to use it as a PFP will likely just keep it as that PFP format, because that incrementally has more and more value to them. That is personal to them, that is not to anyone else over that use as well.
Right. So we're recording this right now in the middle of sort of meme coin, scene coin mania. So I'm wondering, do you expect there to be speculation around this token? And is that worrisome, or is that something we should be concerned about, or just sort of let the market do what it does?
Yeah, I would recommend people to read Jacob Horn's Speculation is a Superpower essay. And I think it's like speculation is a backbone of a lot of economic energy. That venture investing for startups that end up being economic actors that are important in our economy is also speculation. The public markets that help us distribute the resources in our economy to the right market participants that are utilizing those resources well is a form of speculation. Like speculation is in itself not a bad thing. The question is whether that is leading to something positive sum, and also that the agent that captures the speculation can do something meaningful with that. So the question for nouns is like, if we had more, so I think there's a good chance that the nouns fungible token experiences some amount of speculation and buyers. And that's just because like the fungible tokens, fungible token meme coins immediately have a much larger market cap often, because the liquidity is so much higher and easier. And so if you compare Nouns' NFT market cap, it's something like maybe 50 million or something.
I thought it was 25 million I saw recently.
Yeah. Okay. Then maybe it's 25 or 30 or something like that. It's comparable to Hire, which is a meme coin that came into existence for like the past 2 months or so. And I think I have nothing against Hire, and I have nothing against and I'm actually a huge fan. But what I'm saying is like the provenance weight, the brand weight that Nouns has built for the past 2-3 years is much greater than most meme coins. So the market cap imbalance is just a reflection of the form factor that they're delivered in. And this change makes the Nouns NFTs, it doesn't create new supply, but it basically creates an API that allows the NFTs to convert back and forth to the fungible token format. So you can think of as nouns having a fungible token supply that of the currently 20 million or so that you're saying. And then I think a lot of market participants can kind of realize that nouns is quite undervalued, and there might be speculation. But what's good about this tie is that if there is speculation on the nouns fungible token, then that would result in people, the only way that you can get the fungible token supply is if you deposit the NFT. And so the NFTs will be speculated on as well. The price tie will always be in moments like for a few minutes or there can be dislocations, but there can't be any fundamental kind of long-term dislocations. There can't be a 10% or 50% premium or discount that lasts for days between those two formats, because they're ultimately the same thing. So any fungible token speculation is ultimately the non-fungible token speculation as well. They're tied, and if there's no more nouns that if there's a premium and there's no more kind of secondary on OpenSea and Blur that can be bought, then that will also come to the auction as well. So ultimately, that economic energy that can be harnessed will be harnessed into the primary market, which is the auction, where we get our auction revenue. And ultimately, we can do much more things with that. And also, we can potentially get out of the current state where the auction price is lower than book value that we've been in for the past year and a half or so. The book value for each noun is about 10 ETH or so. Currently, the auctions have been going around 7 or 8 ETH. It's not that far. So if there is more economic buyers that result in it going above that, then the whole thing around people are buying nouns just to fork the treasury assets is no longer a viable thing. That's only viable when auction price is lower than book value. So I'm excited about a world where we have auction prices that are above book value. I'm excited about a world where the auction prices being sustainably higher leads us in having more auction revenue, where we can do more things. And I'm excited about having a larger kind of economic fan base that have a reason to pay more attention, that results in the nouns economy growing as well. Whether that's people that would watch the nouns movie or the documentary, or be fans of the nouns esports team, or buy T-shirts, or go to the nouns deli or the nouns coffee shop. All of those businesses or public art projects or public software that is built on top of nouns would love to have more users, and their lives and what they're doing would be more interesting if there were more users and fans and buyers. And the fungible token is really a meaningful step function that we could explore into to have a chance at that.
You mentioned Nouns Esports just a minute ago, and actually Sam from Nouns Esports, new Nouner Sam, congrats, asked a question on Farcaster. Love to see it, about nouns. Yeah, nouns $, and he asked about specifically whether you have any thoughts on how $nouns or the nouns fungible token will affect the arbitrage of the auction. I know you actually just started touching on that a moment ago, but can you answer that question? Do you think it'll be a positive, a negative, or it won't have an effect at all on the arbitrage?
Again, the nouns fungible token in Uniswap pools that would be trading in a fungible token way, and nouns that are trading on secondary on open layers like OpenSea or Blur, and nouns that are being sold in the primary auction, they all are the same nouns token at the end of the day. So they will all have roughly the same price. And if for minor moments, there can be dislocations. If somebody buys a ton of the nouns fungible token, then the pool can, for a moment, can be lopsided. But then people will arb that away such that they will all roughly be on the same price. So if you think that the nouns fungible token will be speculated, and that price will go will push prices up, then there's no that happens and the NFTs prices don't go up or the auction price don't go up. They're all tied together. And the fundamental problem with the arbitrage, like the kind of buying below book value and forking away thing is it's only a thing that is viable and existent when auction prices are below book value. So pushing auction prices, having economic demand for the daily auction that exceeds the book value of what the noun represents is always the only fundamental solution to the problem that we've been having. Everything else is just like temporary solutions.
The only way to get rid of the arb is to get rid of the arb, basically.
Yeah. So I expect it to be a good chance at a positive resolution, but of course, you don't know what markets will do, and potentially maybe the fungible token will result in too much speculation, and then maybe a crash, and then we will be back to where we are, or maybe even further down, etc. So there's no guarantee as to what the effect would be. Markets are markets, but fundamentally, I think we have a good shot, because what I think is the situation that we are in is that we have a large fan base that would love to own some economic ownership in nouns, but they cannot afford a full noun. And those people are essentially willing buyers, like organic, real buyers, not just like speculators, but people that would buy and hold, that currently don't have a way of expressing that. So if you think of traders as just like people that would buy and sell at any moment, and they're like awash, and ultimately prices are moved more by buyers that have conviction, that would buy and hold the asset. Given that we are really increasing the base of people that can do that, my guess would be that it would be positive, but who knows?
Well, I appreciate the context and framing that you've given to this. I think it'll be really helpful for people to hear. Last question about that specific topic. Any alpha that you know of on timeline? I know you've been chatting a little bit about this with verbs. Is this something that's happening like next year, next month? Do we know?
I don't have an exact one here. I think there's two things in parallel. One is the verbs team is working on the implementation. And on the foundation side, we're discussing with foundation lawyers on kind of the regulatory risk side of things. But both of those aren't things that would necessarily take years or even months, really, to resolve. I think we're in the range of weeks. Yeah.
That is alpha. Shifting gear for a minute, one of the other things I was excited to talk to you about today on the pod was the nouns minting economy. And Chris Carella actually asked a question on Warpcast that sort of leads us into it quite well. Chris asked, I want to hear Forty talk about the mint economy and nouns and your initial excitement about bound.wtf, for example, and just ways that we can maybe encourage more minting behavior within nouns. Love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very down with nouns, just like normal businesses where they sell t-shirts, sell coffee, sandwiches, movie tickets, all the normal things to generate revenue. And it's a pretty straightforward business. And as we have more fans, it will make more and more sense. And it contributes to the culture and the economy. And I love that. So that should continue, and we should be open to funding those as well. If something needs a kickstart, we should be open to funding that as well. But one of the main things that I feel uniquely excited for Nouns to fund is for Nouns to fund public goods that otherwise would not be funded. And then for them to, if they have truly a kind of continue to have a public good nature where they give everything out for free, whether in a CCO-like format for the art, open source for the code, etc., and don't charge anything, or some things can can't really be charged. If you are Coin Center and you're educating regulators about the value of crypto and trying to avoid bad laws, then how do you monetize that? You just can't. So there's these things that are just not monetizable. But it would be nice if funding for those things aren't just all governance. Governance as in people arguing and evaluating and voting. and coming to one kind of centralized decision. Because nouns DAO ultimately comes to like a yes or no, and that's really costly and burdensome, and sometimes it's the wrong amount, sometimes it's the wrong outcome, sometimes it just takes too long and is not worth it for the builder's kind of efforts. So what would be nice is if those public goods can kind of compete in their own market type of situation. But then it comes back, it's almost like a paradox. Like, how can a public good have its own revenue source, compete in its own market? Well, the existence of nouns, existence of NFTs was the kind of the initial premise that allowed nouns to make its kind of aspirational dream that memes can maybe fund public goods can work at a project level as well. So you could build a meme around, let's say you're trying to get a law passed in the United States that would help Ethereum. You could build a meme out of that, and then you can sell NFTs out of that meme. And then if there were enough people that were minting that, and it doesn't really have to be I mean, NFTs can be all sorts of things. It can be
delivery at dawn is a good example.
Yeah. Delivery at dawn is another example. That is something tied to an Ethereum release. I mean, a really cool thing is that the software release version of the final Denkun upgrade that resulted in the upgrade was named after the film that Delivery at Dawn.
That's a meme.
So so the film that we created for the release ended up naming the release itself, and those two memes are like the actual code public good and the meme that artwork, that film, is actually fundamentally tied to each other because the people that created both kind of created that mimetic tie. And anyways, so like mint can ultimately be this thing. Like NFTs are this kind of selling the provenance of the meme as this ultimate thing where you can still have revenue while completely keeping the public goods kind of permissionless access to all for free aspect intact. So then if we all just minted more as a way of like in the same way that we might buy from one coffee shop or the other to support that coffee shop, that brand, whatever they represent. Like I might buy a Patagonia instead of a North Face or whatever because Patagonia gives more back to Earth or something. Like similar things could be happening at a mint level as well. Like mint to support is really a thing that can happen at a larger scale.
Shout out to Zora too, because creator rewards have really changed that whole paradigm where people can just feel like they're going and collecting for free, quote unquote free, but at the same time supporting these causes. Yeah.
So a few things. So that's the dream. Like make and then Nouns governance can even like deploy a lot of its capital this way as well. Like right now, it's all yes, no votes in a centralized decision that we distribute. Now we have a bit through rounds, but like, I mean, even rounds could utilize this mechanic where it's just over on top of a certain set of mints, and based on how many people mint that, we could even kind of boost that. We could be like a matching fund on top of that. But just this way of like being able to allocate to the public goods within our world without having to vote on things, but rather it being, or like having to come to like centralized yes, no decisions, but rather like kind of a more concave, just like a more smooth distribution across what people prefer and differing views all being able to coexist is just somewhere that I think we should be leaning into more and more. And what needs to happen? I mean, the really minting needs to get so easier. I mean, I love Warpcast, but for somehow the mint thing still, like, you have to click the mint button and then it like has a spinning wheel for like 5 seconds to make up its mind as to whether you can mint in app or you have to go to Zora. And then even if it is like even if it's like an in-app mint with warps, then it's like has another spinning wheel for like another 10 seconds. It's saying it's broadcasting for 60 seconds. It's just like, and if it's you have to go to Zora, then it's worth it. You have to like connect and then sign and then sign on Rainbow Wallet or whatever wallet that you use, and it's like 3 apps. The number of times that I want to mint a thing and I just like dread the time that I would be stuck in it that I don't is crazy. It's crazy. I would be minting like 100 times more if it was just as easy as a like button or 2 buttons to spend warps or something. Like, but it's just no reason that it should be so hard, but it still is. And it's one of the like my biggest pet peeves of the current kind of minting situation. But hopefully it will get better. It's just, yeah, everything that I've been complaining about things have always gotten better in the Warpcast world and like in Zora world and in general. So I just imagine this is just also a matter of time as well. But anyways, that, and then we need concentrated kind of like discovery experiences around it. So I think historically we didn't have a way of like what are like nouns mints that we can really kind of promote or like kind of concentrate attention around. I think Zora now has splits. Bound was trying to do the same thing, but Zora now has a feature that supports it natively, so we can use that. So like basically any NFT collection that a Zora mint that splits some of its mint revenue, let's say we can put it at 10% or 20% or whatever, we can have a threshold. And any Zora mint that splits a certain amount to the DAO address with Treasury on any L2, etc. We can just say that those are the mints that we kind of say is part of our universe, and then we can present them to people, and then we can also incentivize the matching pool on top of them, etc. I think, yeah, that's something that we could do.
That's similar to the tagging feature that I've been requesting of Jacob for a while, like just a way to tag, your mints as nouns. But it would be easier in your example where just doing the split is the tag.
Yeah, split is a tag. I think split is a better tag than a tag because it actually has a cost to it. You're anything that is permissionless. If we want to make something permissionless, like open permission is great, but then that always you need to put a price to. You need to put some sort of economic hurdle to it, or else it doesn't mean anything, and it becomes just a large kind of set of garbage. And so, and people will sybil it and all these things. So ultimately, we need to, if we're going to make it permissionless like a tag, then it should have a cost to it. So the economic tie, splitting some revenue with us, is the best thing. Yeah.
Well, I will say that at the Yellow Collective, we've been kind of blown away with how well this model has been working. We've had almost as much revenue from minting our content as we had from our daily auctions, which I think is a good early prover that this model can really be really powerful. My question would be like, how can Nouns ensure that people that do go down this road get the attention that they need on those mints to make that revenue real? Because for us, we're lucky that we get a lot of attention from the other ecosystems that we kind of bridge to and from, meaning Base and Farcaster. But if it was just Nouns alone, it wouldn't be as meaningful. So how does Nouns bridge that gap, so to speak?
Yeah, I think we kickstarted, we solved the cold start problem by incentivizing it ourselves. Like we could have a Farcaster rounds channel that actually is a mint channel where then the popular kind of mints or surface and actually gets incentivized by ETH, or later if we have the nouns fungible token, we can give it nouns fungible token. So I think we can just make it economically meaningful for the creators at the beginning. And then people will be minting there, and then there would be, because there are good mints there, then people would start paying attention, and then we can get the flywheel going. And then at some point, it will just be part of the culture. And you need like just 1 or 2 real success cases also for it to become more meaningful. Like the Farcaster OG NFT, for example, was the first that really became like a meaningful NFT amongst the Farcaster ecosystem, and like an L2 NFT. It overcome all those things and became, even though it was like a airdrop NFT, it became very valuable. And I could imagine most nouns NFTs won't have any value, but some will break through into having some sort of like cultural provenance in the future, where then it will result in people using that some ways or airdrops or just it in itself gaining kind of provenance value in the secondary markets, such that then people will start speculating on nouns kind of mints outside of just the OG DAO nouns NFTs. And then it can start to become a meaningful kind of market of itself, where people actually do buy them with kind of trying to make expectations about what might happen in the future, and then you can kind of have it going. I think the Yellow Collective is so much props and an incredible proof point that yes, the mint revenue can also become a meaningful source of revenue, and yes, it's almost like a that would be it's the most unique and aligned way that the DAO can have revenue outside of auction revenue. So we can sell our provenance, we can sell our signature. Like basically, it's a signed art piece that we're selling every day. The only difference about this, so our signature, the DAO's cryptographic kind of footprint on the art is what makes it really valuable, and we're basically selling this one signed art piece. And I think other sources of ETH revenue are generally kind of trying to compete with the old model. And the unique model that we have is allowing others to sell signed art, and whatever they permissionlessly give back to us as an attribution, almost like a provenance pointer. Getting that revenue feels very much kind of aligned because that is what we are.
I love that. Well, I'm looking forward to lots more minting of nounish content in the rest of 2024. I do think what Seneca is doing with rounds also is helping a lot. And I know they're about to release a feature where you can do a round where you have to mint it first to enter, which I think is going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah. I used to think that rounds might be kind of distinct from like what we were trying to do with Bound or with like the Zora split thing, and I now think that it's converging. What Seneca is doing with kind of spinning up different channels to have different pockets of incentivization for different things that we want, like prop dates or like animations, drawings, and now let's say mints, and you can imagine things like vote with reasons and stuff like that. So that we can kind of decide different amounts of ETH that we want to allocate to different behaviors that we want to incentivize, and then be able to incentivize them is a huge unlock that I think we just, with the ease of Farcaster likes, holy shit, it's just a magical thing. And so, yeah, what I wanted was that we can incentivize nouns mints, a way of defining the universe of nouns mints, and then a way of incentivizing it. And that was what Bound was. And now we can do defining the universe of nouns mints through the Zora split, and we can do the incentivization through rounds. And so we basically have what we needed, I think. And because So it's just, I'm very excited about that.
Is this, so am I understanding this correctly? This would be like a bot that scrapes Zora for any mints that have that split and puts them in a channel? Is that what you're thinking of, or am I just?
I don't know exactly what Seneca has in mind. I mean, I can imagine it to be like an automatic submission like that, where Solly builds a bot that just looks at Zora mints and then like auto creates a cast that then is in that channel, and it just.
I would go to that channel every day.
Yeah. Or it could be like just the creator also has to put up a cast that has their mint link. I don't think that's that bad either. No. And it can be a way for them to explain or put some context, and that could also just be a nice way to.
My only thought on that is that it might be hard to filter. Like if people put things up without the split, how do you filter those out? Maybe just manually. I don't know.
I think there's a way to automatically filter that. In Solly we trust.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would just be a matter of like following the link and finding the Zora kind of contract and checking whether the split exists, and then a bot kind of auto delisting or kind of like hiding or whatever. It can even be like post. that I think could be solved.
Cool. Let's talk about nouns props just for a minute. We had a couple folks ask questions about sort of your ideal nouns proposal. Sasquatch and Krell both asked if you could fund anything. It was Krell and Brennan asked if you could fund anything, and they mean anything. What would you want funded? Moonshot funding better be big, says Brennan.
Neil, one of the nouners, made an analogy of the DARPA challenges as being like an aspirational version of nouns. And I think that's a pretty good analogy in my mind. Like, for example, we now have a whole like self-driving car industry, right? Where Tesla and Google and all these commercial companies are building self-driving cars, and it's a big thing. Before people believed that it was possible, DARPA, a kind of U.S. government unit that funded a lot of original science or these types of engineering moonshots, put out a challenge saying that, okay, this is a track in desert that we are going to draw. Anyone is allowed to make a team that would build a car that could try to navigate that without supervision, without a person being in the car. And then they ran that contest. And like the first year, everyone fucking failed, or it was like hours. It's just like people didn't know how to build a self-driving car. And then the next year, like the thing that was the kind of, if you the Google thing has like this thing that rotates, and it's basically like really intense LED sensors that are bundled together that is like spinning on top of a car. And that way they can kind of build like a point cloud of like your environment very quickly. And then the car that did that like won. And then they kept doing it until like, holy shit, these cars can actually drive. And then they made it into like a city environment where it was like a small miniature city. And then people were driving that. And then at one point, the world was convinced that this was doable. And like there was a commercial opportunity here. Then DARPA stopped doing it because there's just no now the crazy idea has been proven to the world as viable, and companies will compete to provide that product for the surplus of consumers. And so now I drive a Tesla, and it has incredible self-driving that I use all the time that I love. And that type of thing, that like societal level engineering challenges or art challenges that kind of question what's possible for humanity those types of props would be very exciting for me. But in a more kind of like crypto or on-chain, I think something that we do have to, something that I always care about is that like for us to be grounded in caring about the world that we're a part of, which is the on-chain world. So like that's why when we're doing kind of like donations or charity style props, or let's say called philanthropy, I care more about donating to Coin Center to lobby for us, or the Stand with Crypto efforts, or ZachXBT that helps fight scammers, or the kind of ultrasound relay that helps keep Ethereum transactions censorship resistant. Like I care about those things more, and it's not just that I also care about them more because we're rooted in there. I also think that because we live in this world, have a better chance of actually being able to identify the things that are real versus not. Like if we're just thrown a decision around conservation for certain forests, like what do we're much more likely to make a misallocation of resources there than public goods that we actually use and know and care about. I mean, something remarkable to think about for a second here is like we have produced a fair amount of public tools. I mean, you might argue whether Agora is or not, but like, I mean, it's open source, and like it is a thing that. So like Agora, like Prop House. Let's just look at those two. Those two are used above and beyond outside of nouns as well. And like when Agora came out, DAO tooling was a hot category that a lot of VCs were investing into, and there were a lot of companies and products that competed in that rough governance for DAOs category. And then Agora swept the market, like Optimism, ENS, Uniswap, all the main protocols and L2s use Agora, and like, how did a bunch of NFT voters somehow compete in selecting the best team and product that actually won the market compared to all these nimble venture investors, blah, blah, blah? It's because we chose the thing that we would use. Like, we weren't investing. We were like, what do we need? Can you build that? Just build. And people, especially for these types of public goods, can be a decent judge of what they need. Especially the more hyper local it is, the chances are higher. If you had a small neighborhood meetup and you decided to buy a barbecue grill that the neighborhood should share, probably odds are you made the right choice on whether that was needed and what model you bought. The more like abstracted away it is, if like I am buying a barbecue grill for like a neighborhood in Chicago that I don't know about and whether they need it or not and what model, like then it becomes a shit show. And generally that's what like a lot of government funding becomes. But like the more just the local, hyper local people are just making public funding decisions for themselves, then the likelihood of success is just higher because they're actually domain experts and they're the users. And so I want Nouns to continue to focus more and more on those types of things. And because A, we care about the world we live in, and B, that's where we have an edge. And hopefully give them kind of a way in which they can kind of further spread their wings. And so like in an on-chain world sense, props that I would be really like moonshot excited about is like, if we can be the funders or creators of protocols that reach kind of a Uniswap level of universality and impact.
I agree with you 100%. I know we didn't really have time to dig in today on all things Bitwise. That could probably be an entire other podcast, but I know you specifically wanted to talk about Nouns. I wanted to talk about Nouns, and we had lots of questions from the community. One question that did come in, though, from Seneca was sort of touched on Bitwise a bit, so maybe we'll ask that and sort of wind down here for the pod. He's asking if you see any overlap between your world at Bitwise and with Nouns, and do you think there's any universe where the traditional institutions might take an interest in Nouns? Why or why not that might happen, and what would need to happen to make those people catch notice of Nouns?
Yeah. I actually think of our Bitcoin ETF as like the most nounish Bitcoin ETF.
I agree.
Yeah, and so like because nounish is not necessarily just about having novels on them; it is about kind of an attitude, on kind of an aspiration, or care of like the details, craft, like the things that I mentioned earlier, and we definitely put in that care to the details, and like it was like it's almost aspirational. It's kind of crazy that we are competing with like BlackRock and Fidelity and ARK. Like there's 4 Bitcoin ETFs that have more than $1 billion in AUM, and then the rest add up to less than us. We're about 2.2 billion or so. So like the fact that we're competing in that kind of like underdog setting with the lowest fee, donating 10%, the largest amount, to Bitcoin devs that are keeping the protocol and network alive, and then also publishing the addresses that we hold the Bitcoin in, so that people can check the blockchain directly to be sure that we have the Bitcoin that we say that we have, leveraging the underlying kind of technology that this whole thing is built upon. That's very nounish to me. So I think there's a lot of value in people that are Nouns fans or Nouns owners, or be doing things in their own field that are nounish. I think that also is like an incredibly bullish thing. Like that's why I'm so excited to always see, like, for example, like Wilson or Jesse crush it with base. Like, and Wilson is like pushing forward a lot of standards work around like smart wallets and such. And that is super nounish, pushing the frontier, trying to make things better for people, putting in an incredible amount of attention to like detail and excellence, and actually kind of competing and winning. And like, that is awesome. And so,
that's what makes me the most bullish about nouns personally, is like, you just look at the people. Like, we talk a lot about the network value of nouns, but you just look at the people who consider themselves nounish, people like you said, like Jesse and Wilson and DWR and Will Papper. I just recorded with him this week. These people are all like independently so successful in their field, and they're just killing it, and they all consider themselves nounish. Like, that's very bullish to me.
Yeah. So I'd say, so just to answer your question, I think I'd say that, our Bitcoin ETF is, like, in my mind, very nounish. But directly to like TradFi investors, nouns, I mean, investing in that, like, or I think it would take some time. I think we'd probably have a faster time, like, kind of the cultural people or cultural brands understanding nouns much earlier than Wall Street does, which is fine in my mind.
Yeah, I think that's right. Maybe let's put a feather in the cap of this pod with one final question. What are you most excited about for nouns over the next, let's say, 6 months, which is an eternity in crypto, but what are you most excited about?
I'm excited about, I'm an engineer at heart, so I'm always going to have a kind of a technology leaning to the things that I'm excited about or I think about. And so it's like, how can we kind of change the protocol in a way that really fundamentally changes the game or creates leverage for everything that we do? It's usually the things that kind of get most of my mind. And so we talked a lot about the fungible token, non-fungible token, and how that really expands the economic owner base, the fan base that are tied economically to the success of nouns, is probably the biggest thing. The second biggest thing is the change that the Verb team is working on with the kind of nouns governor, or NFT governor is what people refer to. Basically, we're using currently compound governance, kind of what the governance that was built for fungible tokens. And the main limitation that it has that doesn't really quite work well for us is that delegation happens in an account unit. So like one address is like one account. And if I have 20 nouns in them, then I have to delegate all or nothing to one person, and I can't split it up well. And that has resulted in less delegation because, like, Zora delegates 20 nouns to me, and theoretically they could delegate 5 to 4 people, but managing that is just much less appealing to them because, the complexities to that, and it's not, So I think, even like groups like Nouncil that again is a group, but they could do much more things if they can receive a delegation and then further do something with that themselves. Let's say a rotating body of people that are voted on within that group get the delegation, and they kind of act freely as like individual voters. There's just a lot that can be done in the delegation and voting realm for governance health that is limited by the kind of account-based delegation model that we have. And that's the main motivation of us building our own, so that can now be more granular, and that you can, the idea that the Verb team is working on is that we would have a delegation token. So if you own a noun in your address, then you can mint a delegation token, and holding that delegation token is the voting power, and that you can then transfer it to anyone, and then further allow that person to transfer it to anyone. You can also always destroy it at any time, but so that delegation can move very freely. And that's how delegation works, which is like so much better, and a lot of possibilities arise in my mind in that world, and I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, I'm excited for that too. Yeah, I think that'll make a big difference, getting more people involved in governance. Well, Forty, appreciate you sitting down with me. It's, like you said, long overdue. felt more like a chat than a podcast, and it's nice to hear your thoughts on all these things. And just thank you for all the time you put into Nouns. I really appreciate. I always read your Votes with Reason. I'm like, man, where does he find the time to write these beautiful essays about Nouns governance? But you're very appreciated by me and others. So thank you for the time you put into Nouns. Appreciate it.
Of course. It's ultimately fun for me. Nouns fandom started from my like weekend time, like Saturday mornings, where I just like was like, I want something fun to engage with, and so that's where it grew from. And it is still sometimes I like there's things that I feel like I need to like put an effort into, and it has a little bit of more like a work energy that comes out sometimes these days. But fundamentally, it's a fandom, and it's like a care that is similar to like I've never been interested in sports, so I can't quite know exactly, but I suspect that it's kind of similar. Like you have a team that you're rooting for, you care so much, you're like following all the like free agency like trades and such, and thinking about like salary caps and like what is this, people go crazy with that even when they have like 3 kids and a job, and like, well, they still find time to do that. And I think Nouns is kind of like that for me.
I love it. Well, hopefully Nouns wins the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah. Enjoy Nouns. Please always don't forget that Nouns are silly NFT art project characters. Is a means to invite you into a funky world, and that you should have fun and enjoy Nouns.
I love it. That's the alpha. That's the alpha for this podcast, is enjoy Nouns. Don't forget it. Love it.
All right.
Thank you, 40. See you on Chain. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, good to see you. It's been a little while, I guess. It's almost been a year, I guess, since Toronto, right?
Yeah.
A lot has happened.
A lot has happened. What even that time? It was definitely pre-fork, right?
Yes, it was pre-fork in the good old days. But it was just a lot has happened both in Nouns and also just in like crypto and in general in the past year.
Definitely.
It was still bear market vibes at the time, so.
Bear market vibes before L2s really took off.
That too, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool to see.
Maybe even before Farcaster really took off.
I think so, yeah. And I mean, you were instrumental in getting us all over there on Farcaster early, which, thank you. Thank you for our degen bags. Nouns
Yeah.
Nouns owes you a debt of gratitude for that.